Welcome to this edition of Eyes on Naperville. Here's your host, Kevin Dolan.
Welcome to another version of Eyes on Naperville. Your host, Kevin Dolan. I've had the great fortune of having some wonderful authors on. And I finally have on a great female author, so I'm real proud of that. And it just so happens that she's local. So may I introduce Naperville to Eyez Sewell. And she is from Iran originally, and now here living in Naperville. Well, we're going to talk about the book, The Ruby Tearcatcher. Now, you've written 4 nonfiction books. What inspired you to write a novel?
Well, that's a very good question. My journey began probably about 5 or 6 years ago.
Okay.
I was just having coffee with a friend of mine, and she said, "Do you remember that movie called Not Without My Daughter?" It was with Sally Field, Alfred,
married a boy from over there and
Yes.
took the big, yeah.
Yes,
They had
so
custody
she-
rights, fighting over it.
Yes, yes. And the man was very normal. And then when they moved back to Iran, under the influence of the Islamic revolution and, of course, the culture and the people surrounding them, he got carried away a little bit, you could say. And so he really came across as a little bit, with the religious fervor, you could say, took over him. And of course, he wanted custody of the daughter, and she didn't want to do that. And, I don't want to give away the movie in case someone wants to watch it. And so my friend said, ever since that movie, most of us Americans think that Iranians are fundamentalists and they're all just crazy religious people. And she said, "Now look at you're normal." And I said, "First of all, thank you. I don't know what that means, but thank you for calling me normal." And she said, "I know that you've written books, so perhaps what you could do is write a book and help erase this image, change this image that has been that has stayed in people's minds since that movie." So initially, that was my purpose when I started writing the book, and it was really about my life and what I experienced, how normal my life was as I grew up under the Shah's regime, it didn't take too long before the story evolved. I guess by the time I embellished some facts and exaggerated others, it was difficult to call it a memoir or autobiographical. So I thought I would take advantage of that and really tell another story. I thought there was more to tell than just my life. So the story really started to encompass a lot of other facts, such as what happened to Iran and the lives of Iranian people after the Islamic Revolution. And there's a particular emphasis in terms of how those changes affected the lives of women in Iran.
Okay. Well, you talked a little bit about the type or the genre that the book is in. Who did you write it for?
First and foremost, I would say I wrote this book for women, but for anybody, for all people who suffer at the hands of fundamentalism, specifically religious fundamentalism. There is a strong message with this book, a message that I truly believe in and have taken to heart, and that is a message of tolerance.
What did you hope to accomplish by writing The Ruby Tearcatcher?
Well, my hope was several-fold. As I mentioned, when I first started, I really was hoping to share the beauty of my culture and my people, to take people back to the land of blue-tiled mosques and ancient Persian kings and the bazaars filled with merchants and, the beautiful things that we think of when we think of Persia. But I also wanted to deliver some messages, such as the rights of women in the Middle East and how that has really been impacted by the Islamic Revolution taking over. And really, ultimately, what I hope to accomplish is to bring tolerance so that those who read the book can understand that, from my point of view anyway, there is no difference between us. We're all children of God, equally deserving of His love, and regardless of our gender, country of origin, culture, religion, at the base of it all, we're the same.
I guess that you've kind of answered my next question was going to be, what are people going to gain from this book? And I think you've explained that pretty well. How did the Islamic Revolution change Iran? How did it change everything?
Well, there have been significant changes, and if you read the Ruby Tearcatcher, there's a clear distinction between the life of people, as I said, with an emphasis on the life of women before and after the revolution. Before the revolution, I could dress as I wanted, as you may have in this country. We had freedom in terms of doing a lot of things and thinking a lot of things. Of course, there wasn't as much freedom to speak publicly against the government as we have that freedom and right in this country. But after the revolution, a lot of things changed. The government dictates how you should dress. Women they are required to wear Islamic hijab, covered from head to toe. The rights of women were impacted in the sense that, today a woman in Iran, if she wants to leave the country to go on a trip outside of the country, if she's unmarried, she needs her father's permission. If she's married, she needs her husband's permission. Women under the Shah's regime really were empowered. Many educated women were in positions of power in government and really starting to infiltrate the companies as well. But a lot less women go to work now. It's just become difficult for them to succeed. And, think of it this way. In Iran, it takes 2 women's votes to equal that of 1 man.
Oh, my, that's not fair. I've been dying to wait for this question, and I'm dying to know, what is exactly a tearcatcher, a ruby tearcatcher?
Well, that's one of the first questions actually people ask me is, what's a tearcatcher? I will tell you what that is, and of course I actually have one that a local artist recreated from an ancient antique one that I own. So a tearcatcher in old Persia, ancient kings, when they went to war, the sultans, they'd go to war, they were gone for months at a time. And they used to have harems with multiple wives. So they would give one of these tear catchers to each of their wives. And the idea was that when he returned from war, he would look to see who had cried the most, therefore missed him the most. And just to show you how this works, really, it's a vessel. You put it by your eye and you cry, and the tears collect in there.
What if he cheated?
Well, that's a good question. I guess, I've wondered about that myself. You could put water in there for all, but let's go with the honor system. But there's also other significance to a tear catcher. In fact, in the Old Testament, there's reference made to a tear catcher in where David is praying to God in Psalm 56, where he says, "Thou tellest my wanderings, put thou my tears in thy bottle." There's also rumors that Mary Magdalene carried a tear catcher to the tomb of Jesus. So from my point of view, this vessel and this tear catcher really symbolizes in the book how closely tied we really are, and how it's something as simple as a vessel existed among Persians and Muslims, but reference is also made in the Old Testament, therefore Christians. And again, to my point that we really are the same at the heart of it all.
Very good point. Are the characters and the events in the Ruby Tearcatcher, are they real?